I didn't plan to tell this to anyone. I tried not to. For months I convinced myself that if I stayed quiet, if I pretended it never happened, whatever followed me out of those woods would eventually lose interest. That was a lie. The truth is simpler and worse. It remembers me. If you're listening to this and you've never been alone in the mountains after dark, you won't understand what I mean when I say the silence feels heavy. Not quiet, heavy, like something pressing down on your ears, your chest, your thoughts. Like the forest itself is waiting for you to make a mistake. That's what it felt like the night everything went wrong. I was still on duty when the call came in. Routine wellness check. Middle-aged man. Lived alone in a cabin near the edge of the Smokies. Neighbor hadn't seen him in days. No prior incidents. No threats. No reason to expect anything out of the ordinary. I remember sighing when I took the call. That's the part that keeps replaying in my head. I drove up just before sunset. Gravel road, narrow, trees crowding in so tight they scraped both sides of my cruiser. The air smelled wet and cold even though it was August. No birds, no insects, just my engine and my breathing. I parked where the road disappeared into weeds and shut off the car. The silence hit immediately, hard, like someone had flipped a switch. I should have waited for backup. I didn't. The cabin looked abandoned. Dark windows, porch sagging under its own weight, front door slightly open, moving just enough to creak when the wind passed through. I called out, announced myself, waited. Nothing answered. Inside, the smell stopped me cold. Rot. Not animal rot. Something sweeter. Thicker. My flashlight caught the mess first, chairs knocked over, dishes shattered, deep stains soaked into the floorboards. I didn't see a body, and somehow that was worse. Then I noticed the scratches. They ran along the walls, deep and uneven, like something had been dragged across the wood again and again. Too high for a dog, too wide for claws I recognized. That was when I heard something move behind me. Slow, heavy. I spun, heart hammering, and aimed my light down the hallway. Empty, but the air felt wrong, pressurized, like a storm about to break. I backed toward the door. Something hit the cabin from the outside. Not a knock, an impact. The wall shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. Another hit followed, closer this time, harder. I stumbled outside without thinking, light shaking in my hand, breath fogging in front of my face. The woods beyond the clearing were still. Too still. Then something stood up. At first I thought it was a trick of shadow. Then it straightened fully, and my brain refused to name it. Too tall, too thin, legs bent wrong, arms too long, hanging past its knees. Fur rippled across its body like muscle moving under wet skin. It watched me, not like an animal, like a person deciding something. I ran. I didn't hear it at first. Then the ground started to shake. Each step behind me landed with weight, with intent. I tripped, hit the gravel hard, felt pain explode through my ankle. When I looked up, it was standing over me. Its eyes weren't wild. They were focused. That's when I understood something was wrong in a way I couldn't explain. This wasn't a predator trying to kill me. It was studying me, memorizing me. And then it lunged. A gunshot split the night. Then another. Lights flooded the clearing, and the weight vanished from my chest as suddenly as it had appeared. The thing pulled back, snarled, and disappeared into the trees like smoke. I survived. That's what everyone says. They're wrong. They tell you survival feels like relief. That's another lie. Survival feels like confusion wrapped around terror, followed by the slow realization that whatever almost killed you didn't fail, it chose to stop. Backup rushed in shouting my name, boots crunching gravel, weapons raised. I remember Sergeant Lockridge's face more than anything else. Not fear, not shock, recognition, like she already knew what she was looking at, even if she didn't have words for it. I tried to speak. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. My body shook so hard I couldn't control it. Lockridge knelt beside me, her hand firm on my shoulder, grounding me. "You're safe," she said. But she didn't sound convinced. They took me out on a stretcher. My ankle was broken, deep claw marks along my ribs. The medics kept asking what attacked me. I said bear without thinking. Everyone nodded. No one questioned it. Bears made sense. Bears didn't look back at you like that. The woods stayed silent as we left. No movement. No noise. Like something watching from just beyond the headlights. At the hospital, Lockhart stood in the corner while doctors worked on me. She didn't say a word until we were alone. "That wasn't a bear," she said. I stared at the ceiling. "No." She waited. I didn't elaborate. Some things feel dangerous just to name. 2 days later they found the body. What was left of it? They didn't let me see the photos. Lockridge described enough. Parts scattered too far apart. Bones snapped clean. One leg lodged high in a tree, like something had climbed up there just to place it. Predators don't do that. Collectors do. That night, I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those eyes again. Not glowing, not wild, curious. The next morning, Lockridge showed up at my apartment without calling. She brought photos. Trail camera images from a few miles away. Most were empty frames. Wind, leaves, deer. Then one image stopped me cold. A figure at the tree line. Tall, broad shoulders, long arms, a head shaped wrong for anything human. It wasn't charging the camera. It was standing still, turned slightly, like it had noticed the lens and decided to allow itself to be seen. Timestamp 36 hours before my attack. "It's been here longer than we thought," she said. "How long?" I asked. She hesitated. "Decades." That's when she told me about the other disappearances. Hikers, campers, locals who knew the trails and still vanished. All ruled animal attacks. All wrong in the same ways. I asked the question we were both avoiding. "Why now?" Lockridge exhaled slowly. "Maybe it's not new. Maybe it's just gotten confident." We didn't say the rest out loud. Maybe it was expanding. We went back that evening. I shouldn't have. My ankle wasn't healed. My wrist still ached, but staying home felt worse. Like waiting. We didn't park near the cabin this time. We hiked in from the opposite direction, deeper into the woods, following old property maps. That's how we found the shed. It barely looked like a structure anymore, just worked wood and rot. But inside, the bones were arranged carefully. Spirals, patterns, symbols carved into dirt and wood. Animal remains mixed with human bones. Old ones, newer ones. Someone had been documenting it. A rusted metal box held notebooks, journals going back to the early 80s. A hunter, the original owner of the land. He'd seen it first, thought it was a drunk hallucination, then a bear, then something else. He tracked it, studied it, winded it, didn't kill it. The last entry was dated almost 30 years ago. It learns. It remembers. Do not hunt it. Lockridge looked up from the page. Too late. A branch snapped outside. Then another. Footsteps. Slow. Measure. Circling. The woods felt tighter than before, like the trees had leaned closer. Something rushed us from the dark. Lockridge went down hard, slammed into the dirt. I fired without thinking. The thing shrieked, high and human, then vanished again. And then the eyes appeared. Not one pair. Many. They didn't rush us. They watched. That's when I understood. It wasn't alone. We retreated, backs together, weapons raised, every step feeling wrong, like moving through a place we weren't allowed anymore. Then I saw it. The tall one. Different from the rest. Black fur, broader chest, pale eyes that reflected nothing. It stood fully upright, confident, still. The others stayed back. I knew without knowing how. This was the one in charge. It smiled. Lockridge fired. Missed. The thing didn't react. Then everything exploded into motion. She was hit from the side, thrown like a rag doll. I fired blindly. Shadows scattered. Growls echoed from every direction. When I reached her, she was barely conscious. Blood everywhere. We dragged ourselves back toward the cabin clearing, toward my cruiser. That's when I saw the door. Open. I knew I'd locked it. Scratches ran across the windshield, deep grooves forming the same spiral from the shed. A message. Then it stepped out of the trees. The one that attacked me before. It took my rifle like it weighed nothing, sniffed my face, and then it spoke. You came back. I froze. The words weren't clean. The accent wasn't human, but the intent was clear. Then it said something worse. Now you stay. That was when I understood the truth. This wasn't a hunt. It was ownership. I don't remember screaming, but my throat was raw afterward, so I must have. The thing's grip crushed my wrist like it was testing how fragile I was, not trying to kill me, measuring, learning. When it finally let go, it didn't retreat like an animal scared of a fight. It stepped back the way a person steps away from something they've already decided on. Then it listened. Its head tilted slightly, ears twitching, eyes shifting past me toward the tree line. Something else had its attention. That's the only reason I live. It melted backward into the woods, never turning its back on me. The tree swallowed it whole, like they'd been waiting. I dragged Lockridge into the cruiser and slammed the door. My hands shook so badly I dropped the keys twice before getting them into the ignition. Nothing happened. No engine. No lights. No radio. That's when the radio crackled on its own. Static first, then a voice. Not dispatch. Not human. Deputy Harwell. It said my name the way someone says it when they are smiling. Lockridge groaned beside me, barely conscious, blood soaking the seat. I slapped the radio, tore the mic free, threw it onto the floor. Outside, the woods began to change. Eyes opened one by one. Pale, reflective, too many to count. They weren't rushing us. They weren't growling. They were waiting. Like we were supposed to do something next. I remembered the ranger station then. Old, half forgotten, about a mile and a half north. Solar backup, radios, supplies. It was the only place we had a chance. I got Lockridge out of the car, half carried her, half dragged her into the trees. Every step felt like the ground was resisting us, like the forest didn't want us moving forward. We heard them following. Not footsteps, breathing. Slow, controlled, matching our pace. That's when we saw it. A clearing ahead, and in it a child. At least that's what my brain tried to call it. The face was wrong, too loose, like skin borrowed from someone else. The eyes were too far apart, the smile too wide. Its arms hung down past its knees, fingers tipped with claws. Mama's waiting, it said. The voice was deep, ancient, wearing a child's mouth like a costume. I fired the flare without thinking. Red light exploded over the trees. And for just a second, everything was visible. Dozens of them. Tall ones, crawling ones that barely looked finished, all standing just beyond the light, watching us like an audience watching a performance they'd already seen before. Then the light died. They screamed. We ran. Branches tore at us. Roots grabbed at our feet. Something snapped its jaws inches from Lockridge's back. I fired blindly, felt something recoil. We slid down a ravine and crashed into the ranger station like broken glass. I barricaded the door. The silence returned. Then the scratching started. Slow, deliberate, nails on wood. I got the radio working. Called for help. The voice that answered wasn't human. Signal received, it said. Mama's waiting. That's when I understood something else. They weren't just in the woods. They were in the air, in the signal, in the spaces between things. We weren't hiding. We were being contained. They came through the walls. One got inside, smaller, twisted. I killed it with a hatchet. The sound it made wasn't animal. It sounded confused, like it didn't understand dying. The hell that followed shook the building. Something big was coming. Not the Alpha. Something worse. The fog outside began to glow. The shadow passed the window. It had no single shape, just mass, eyes opening and closing across it like sores, limbs dragging through the dirt. Mama. The door began to break. I knew we were out of time. So I burned the station. Gasoline everywhere. Fire racing through wood and bone and screaming flesh. The smell was indescribable, like burning hair mixed with metal and rot. We escaped through the crawl space. The Alpha waited for us there. It told me I couldn't leave. Lockwood shot it. I emptied my magazine. It fled. Wind did. Promising. We crawled out into the ravine as the station burned behind us. The Forest Watch. They found us the next morning. Officially, it was a fire, an animal attack, an accident. Unofficially, men without names asked me questions they didn't write down. Lockridge never woke up. The woods erased the evidence. And now the voice follows me. On radios, in dreams, in silence. Mama's waiting. I don't think she's trapped anymore. I think we let her out. I thought once the helicopter lifted us out of that ravine, once the smoke and trees shrank beneath us, I'd feel relief. I didn't. I felt exposed. Like leaving the forest hadn't saved us, it had just removed the walls. The medic kept asking me questions. My name, the date, where we were. I answered automatically, but my eyes stayed locked on the tree line disappearing below. Even from the air, I could feel it watching, not chasing, remembering. Lockridge lay strapped to the stretcher beside me, oxygen mask fighting with each shallow breath. Her skin had gone gray, the kind of color that doesn't belong on someone who's still alive. I kept waiting for her to squeeze my hand, to ground me, to prove we'd both made it out. She didn't move. As we crossed the edge of the park boundary, something strange happened. The helicopter radio crackled, then cut out entirely. The pilot cursed under his breath and slapped the panel. For maybe 3 seconds, just 3, I heard breathing in my headset. Not static. Breathing. Slow. Patient. Then the radio came back online, and the pilot said it was probably interference from the terrain. I didn't correct him. I didn't trust my voice. At the hospital, they separated us immediately. Trauma teams pulled Lockridge away, shouting vitals, pushing blood, cutting her uniform off. Someone guided me down a different hallway, sat me in a wheelchair, wrapped my wrist, my ankle, my ribs. They asked me what happened. I told them what I was supposed to. Bear attack. Fire. Disorientation. Shock. No one pushed back. Not really. In the Smokies, bear is a magic word. It closes files, ends conversations. But I noticed something else. By the time the sun came up, there were men in the hallway who weren't hospital staff. No badges. No patches. No insignia. They didn't introduce themselves. They just waited. When they finally came into my room, one of them shut the door carefully behind him, like he didn't want anyone overhearing. Deputy Harwell, he said, smiling without warmth, we're here to help you understand what happened. He didn't take notes. He didn't record the conversation. He just listened. I told the story again, a cleaner version this time. Less fire, less teeth, less voices. He nodded like he'd heard it all before. At one point, I asked him who he worked for. He tilted his head slightly and said, that's not important. Then he asked a question that made my stomach drop. Did it speak to you? I didn't answer fast enough. His smile faded. That's when I realized something terrible. They already knew. They weren't investigating. They were confirming. Lockridge died that night. Massive brain bleed, too much damage, too long without proper care. They let me see her once, briefly. Machines breathing for her, tubes everywhere. Her face slack, unrecognizable. I wanted to apologize. I wanted to tell her she was right. I wanted to say I was sorry I convinced her to go back. She never woke up. Afterward, the sheriff came by. Sheriff Nolan. He looked exhausted, older than I remembered. He didn't ask questions. He told me how it was going to be written up. Wild animal attack, secondary fire, structural collapse. Tragic, but explainable. We don't need panic, he said quietly. We don't need folklore getting traction. I asked him if he believed it. He didn't answer. They suspended me pending review. That review never came. When I went back to my apartment, the place felt wrong immediately. Like someone had been inside, but not physically. Nothing was moved. Nothing stolen. But the air felt used. The first night, I slept with the lights on. The second night, I didn't sleep at all. I heard scratching outside my bedroom window around 3 a.m. Not loud, just enough to notice. When I checked, there were 3 long marks in the glass, too deep for branches. The third night, I found bones on my porch, small ones, arranged in a spiral. I tried to leave town after that. I packed a bag, loaded my car, drove 20 miles before the radio turned on by itself. Static, then breathing, then my name. I slammed the brake so hard the car fishtailed into the shoulder. When I turned the radio off, the breathing continued for a few seconds anyway. That's when the dreams started. Forests that stretched forever, trees bent inward like ribs, shapes moving just out of sight. Always the feeling of being guided somewhere. Never chased, always led. And in the distance, something massive shifting, waking, gathering. Mama's waiting. I went back to the Keene property one last time, desperate to prove to myself it had been real. The road wasn't there. GPS showed nothing. Maps showed forest. Where the cabin had been was untouched land. No foundation. No scorched marks. No sign anyone had ever lived there. Same with the ranger station. Con, not burned. Erase, like the land itself had swallowed the evidence. That's when I understood the worst part. Fire hadn't stopped them. Bullets hadn't stopped them. Exposure hadn't stopped them. We hadn't destroyed anything. We'd only annoyed it. The disappearances started spreading after that, not just in the Smokies, Appalachia, Pacific Northwest, even reports overseas. Same patterns, same whispers, same recordings, phones left behind, breathing, voices. Mama's coming. Whatever she is, she's not bound to one forest anymore. She's using us now. Our radios, our signals, our fear, and she remembers me. I know that because sometimes, late at night, when everything is quiet and I'm almost asleep, I hear footsteps in my hallway. Heavy, bipedal, patient, stopping just outside my bedroom door, waiting